My daughter-in-law pried the only memory of my mother from my finger, telling me, "You've already lived your life. I'm just starting mine. If you've ever been made to feel invisible in your own home, stay with me. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you, for just a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Isabel Flores. I'm 73 years old, and my entire life has unfolded between these cracked walls in an old neighborhood in San Antonio, where the bells of St. Francis Church still mark the hours just as they did when I was a girl. My hands, wrinkled and stained by time, smell permanently of Fell's naphtha soap and corn dough. These same hands washed other people's clothes for 40 years in the utility sink out back, scrubbing shirt collars until they were white as clouds, ironing school uniforms late into the night while my children slept in the next room. This morning, like every morning for more years than I can count, I got up at 5:30. My knees popped as my feet touched the cold cement floor. I made the sign of the cross before the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe hanging over my bed. The same print my mother hung there in 1962, its gilded frame peeling and its glass clouded by decades of prayers whispered in the dark. The damp smell of the walls always mixes with the scent of the copal incense I burn on Sundays, creating that atmosphere that to me is home, but that my daughter-in-law, Ashley, calls the smell of old age and poverty. I put on my floral robe, the same one I've worn for the last 10 years, its buttons misaligned because I never find the time to sew them on right. My worn-out slippers shuffled down the narrow hallway to the kitchen, where the cast-iron skillet was already waiting for me on the gas stove, one of the burners crooked, the one my oldest son, Ryan, promised to fix 6 months ago, but keeps forgetting every time he visits. If he visits. The kitchen is small, with white tiles that were once bright, but now have brown cracks from so much accumulated grease and steam. The wooden pantry has a door that doesn't close properly and creaks every time I take out the plates. I made coffee in the dented enamel coffee pot, the same one I bought when I married Ernest. God rest his soul. The water boiled with that sharp whistle that always reminds me of the mornings when he would sit in that same corner chair, reading the newspaper while I served him his steaming cup with 3 spoonfuls of sugar. Today is Sunday. On Sundays, my son Ryan comes for dinner with his wife, Ashley, and my 2 grandchildren, Sebastian and Valerie. Although coming for dinner really means that I spend the whole morning preparing mole, Spanish rice, homemade tortillas, and caramel flan, while they arrive after noon looking annoyed because the traffic on the I-10 was impossible. It means I clean my house starting at 6 in the morning, dust every corner, wash the good dishes that I only use when they visit, and put on my least worn-out dress, the blue one with little white flowers that I bought at the flea market 3 years ago on clearance. While I was chopping the chilies for the mole, my eyes fell on the ring I wore on my right index finger, a thin, old silver band with a dull blue stone the size of a lentil. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't draw attention. It's just a forgotten object that my mother, Rosa Mendez, gave me 3 days before she died in 1985, her hands trembling and her voice broken by pneumonia. Mija, a man in Seville, gave this to me when I worked in his house, back around 1960. He said it was an antique. It never did me any good, but I want you to have it. So you'll remember me. Those were almost her last words. I squeezed her hand, feeling her fragile bones under skin as thin as tissue paper, and I treasured that ring as if it were pure gold. Not because it was worth anything. I always thought it was cheap costume jewelry, but because it was the only material thing I had left of her. My mother never had jewels, never had luxuries. She had calloused hands, knees sore from kneeling to scrub other people's floors, and a heart that broke into 1,000 pieces when my father left us for a younger woman, leaving her alone with 3 children in a rooftop room with no hot water. That ring was my connection to her. I wore it every day. When I touched it, I felt that she was still with me, whispering in my ear that I was strong too, that I could handle anything too. At 2 in the afternoon, I heard the honk of Ryan's car outside. I went out to open the rusted metal gate that groans like a soul in pain. My son's gleaming black car was an obscene contrast to the faded walls of my house and the potholes in the street. Ryan got out in his perfectly pressed dress shirt, pressed by Ashley with an expensive steam iron, not my old iron. and his Italian shoes that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. "Hey, Mom," he said without looking me in the eye, giving me a quick peck on the cheek like someone completing a formality. Ashley got out of the other side. She always gets out of the other side, never the same one as Ryan, as if sharing a door was beneath her. She wore a fitted wine-colored dress, high heels, her blonde hair, dyed, obviously, perfectly straight, and that overpowering French perfume that lingers in my house for hours after she's gone. Her dark sunglasses covered half her face, but I didn't need to see her eyes to know what she thought of me. "Mrs. Flores," she said with that cold smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "You look lovely. Is that a new dress?" "No, dear, it's the same old one," I replied, trying to sound cheerful. "Oh." It looked familiar. The tone. It's always the tone. The words can be kind, but the tone cuts through you like a sharp knife. That's Ashley's talent. To wound you with elegance, to destroy you with a smile, to make you feel miserable without anyone else noticing. The children got out of the car with their tablets in hand, without even looking up to greet me. Sebastian is 12, and Valerie is 10. I took care of them when they were babies. I bathed them, changed their diapers, sang them lullabies while Ashley needed her space, and Ryan worked late. Now they look at me as if I were a piece of furniture, as if I were the help. They went into the house and sat in the living room. No one asked if I needed help. No one offered to set the table. No one noticed that I had been cleaning for 4 straight hours until my lower back ached. Ryan turned on the TV to watch the football game. Ashley checked her phone with a bored expression. The kids remained hypnotized by their screens. I served the meal on the dining room table, the wooden table I inherited from my grandmother, which bears the knife marks and pot burns of 3 generations. I placed the steaming mole in the ceramic tureen, the rice on the oval platter, the tortillas wrapped in the embroidered napkin I handmade 20 years ago. Everything was perfect. Everything smelled delicious. We sat down. Ryan said a quick mechanical grace. They began to eat. I watched them from my place at the head of the table, waiting for a comment, a word of thanks. But no one said anything, just the sound of spoons against plates and chewing, until Ashley put her fork down with a sharp clink. "Mrs. Flores, I don't know how to say this without offending you." My heart skipped a beat. "But this mole tastes strange. I don't know, like hospital food. Did you use old chilies?" The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan stopped chewing. The children looked up for the first time. I felt the air get stuck in my throat. I used the same recipe as always, dear. The same one Ryan has loved since he was a boy. Oh, don't be offended. I'm just telling the truth. You know I have a very refined palate. I come from a family of restaurateurs in New Orleans. This is edible, but that's about it." Ryan cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mom, don't take it personally. Ashley's just used to a different kind of seasoning." I sat frozen, my hands in my lap, clutching the napkin until my knuckles turned white. A whole morning of work, a lifetime of cooking for my son. And now his wife was belittling me in front of him, and he didn't say a single word in my defense. They finished eating in tense silence. I didn't take another bite. I cleared the plates with trembling hands, feeling tears burn behind my eyelids but refusing to cry. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. While I was washing the dishes in the sink, Ashley walked into the kitchen with her empty coffee cup. She left it next to the sink without even handing it to me, as if I were the hired help. She stood there, watching me wash. I could feel her gaze fixed on my back. "Mrs. Flores." I turned around. Her eyes were fixed on my right hand, on my ring. What a beautiful ring. I've never noticed it before. Instinctively, I made a fist. It's a memento from my mother. It's not worth anything. It just has sentimental value for me. Really? It looks antique. I love vintage things. There was a pause. "Isn't it a little big on you?" "No, dear. It fits me perfectly." Ashley smiled. That smile I already knew. The smile that never brought anything good. "That's a shame. I have a very important party next Saturday. A gala dinner with Ryan's partners. I need something elegant but discreet. Something with a story." My stomach clenched. "Ashley, this ring is the only thing I have from my mother." "Oh, don't be so sentimental. I'd only borrow it for one night. I'll give it back on Sunday, I promise. I'd really rather you didn't. You'd rather? Her tone changed, hardened. So you'd rather I go to that dinner without a single accessory and have the partners think Ryan married someone with no class? You'd rather ruin your own son's professional image? I was speechless. She took a step forward and held out her hand. Give it to me. Just for one night. Don't be selfish. You've already lived your life. I'm just starting mine. Those words. Those damned words. My hand trembled. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that the ring was mine, that no one had the right to touch it, that my life still had value, that I still mattered, but I didn't. Because I'm old. Because I'm poor. Because I'm afraid of losing my son. Because my whole life, I was taught that women like me can't say no. Slowly, with my heart breaking into pieces, I took the ring off my finger. Ashley took it from my palm without so much as a thank you. She held it up to the window light, examined it with a critical eye, and then slipped it into her designer purse. Perfect. Don't worry. I'll take good care of it. I'll see you on Sunday to return it. She walked out of the kitchen, her heels clicking on the floor. I stood there, looking at my bare hand, feeling the emptiness where the only piece of my mother I had left used to be. Ryan came in a moment later. Everything okay, Mom? Yes, honey. Everything's fine. A lie. Nothing was fine. They left half an hour later. Ryan gave me another quick kiss. The children didn't even say goodbye. Ashley flashed me a radiant smile from the car and waved, the hand where my ring now shone. I closed the gate. I went back into my empty house. I sat in the kitchen chair where Ernest used to sit. And for the first time in many years, I let the tears flow freely. I wasn't crying for the ring. I was crying because my own son had watched his wife strip me of my only treasure and had said absolutely nothing. I was crying because they had made me feel selfish for wanting to keep a memory of my dead mother. I was crying because I realized that in my own family, I no longer mattered. I was just the old woman who cooked, the old woman who cleaned, the old woman who was in the way. That night, I slept with my hand in a fist, as if I could still feel the weight of the ring on my finger. I didn't know that 3 days later, my whole world would explode into a million pieces. I didn't know that this worthless ring I had just loaned out was about to unleash a nightmare that would make me wish I were dead. But most of all, I didn't know that this nightmare was going to become my salvation. The 3 days that followed were the longest of my life. Every morning I would wake up and the first thing I'd do was look at my bare hand, that empty space on my index finger where for 40 years my mother's ring had been. The white mark on my skin was still visible, like a phantom scar reminding me of what they had taken. I found myself touching that space constantly, while making my watery coffee in the mornings, while sweeping the patio where the bougainvillea dropped its purple flowers, while watching the 8 o'clock soap opera without really paying attention. My finger would instinctively search for the ring that was no longer there, and every time it found only bare skin, I felt a void in my chest that stole my breath. On Tuesday, I called Ryan's cell. It was hard to dial because my hands were shaking. He answered in a hurried voice with the noise of an office in the background. Phones ringing, people talking, printers spitting out paper. Mom, I'm busy. What's up? Nothing serious, honey. I just wanted to know if Ashley has worn the ring yet. You know, so she can return it soon. Silence. Mom, don't be so anxious. She'll give it back. What do you need it for if you never go anywhere? His words pierced me like shards of glass. You never go anywhere. As if my life had no value. As if because I'm old and poor, I don't deserve to have anything of my own. It's just that it's the only thing your grandmother left me, Ryan. It's important to me. Oh, Mom. Always so dramatic. It's just an old ring. It's not like it's gold. Let her wear it in peace. Besides, this is good for my career. The partners will see that my wife has class. He hung up before I could respond. I sat on my bed, the phone in my hand, feeling something inside me crack a little more. My own son, the person I carried in my womb, who I breastfed for a year because I had no money for formula, for whom I sewed school uniforms until my eyes grew tired under the light of a bare bulb, now treated me like an annoying burden. That night, I couldn't sleep. I got up at 3 a.m. and went to the living room, where I keep the few photographs I have of my life in a tin box. I searched through them until I found the one I wanted. A faded picture of my mother taken in 1960 before I was born. She's standing in front of a big house in Seville, in her maid's uniform, her hair pulled back in a tight bun, and on her right hand, small in the image but visible, the ring with the blue stone. I traced my finger over her face in the photograph. She looked so young, so full of hope. She didn't know then that her life would be an endless chain of hard work, of unrewarded sacrifices, of ungrateful children like me who, in the end, didn't know how to value all she did for us. "Forgive me, Mom," I whispered in the dark. "I let them take the only thing you left me." On Wednesday morning, while I was watering the pots on my patio, I heard someone knocking forcefully on the gate. It wasn't the normal knock of a neighbor or the mailman. It was an official, insistent banging that made the metal gate vibrate. My heart began to beat faster. I dried my hands on my apron and went to open it. On the other side were 3 men dressed in dark suits. The one in the middle, a man in his 50s with a graying mustache, showed me a badge with the seal of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. "Mrs. Isabel Flores, née Mendez." My voice came out as a thread. "Yes, that's me. Agent Hector Salinas. We need to speak with you about an item in your possession. May we come in?" My legs could barely hold me as I let them in. The 3 men filled my small living room with their imposing presence. One of them, the youngest, took out a tablet and showed me a photograph. It was my ring, my exact ring, with its dull blue stone and its thin silver band. "Do you recognize this piece, ma'am?" "Yes. It's mine." "Well, it was my mother's. She gave it to me before she died." Agent Salinas exchanged a look with his colleagues. He took a manila folder from his briefcase and opened it on the coffee table. The same table where Ryan used to play with his toy cars when he was 5. "Mrs. Flores, this ring is on the list of items stolen from the Hispanic Art Museum of Madrid in 1978. It's a 16th century piece that belonged to the Spanish royal family. It's valued at approximately $3 million. The world stopped. $3 million. The words floated in the air, unreal, as if spoken in a language I didn't understand. Me, who had never had more than a few $100s together in my entire life. Me, who counted pennies to buy a bag of tortillas. Me, carrying a fortune on my finger for 40 years without knowing it. That's impossible," I managed to say. "My mother bought it legally in Seville. She worked in a large house and her employer sold it to her when he retired. She never stole anything in her life." "We're not saying your mother stole it, ma'am. But we need to recover the ring for the investigation. Where is it right now?" And that's when the real panic set in. I don't have it." The 3 agents became alert. "What do you mean you don't have it? Where is it?" "My daughter-in-law, Ashley Moore. She borrowed it from me 3 days ago. For a party." Agent Salinas closed his eyes for a moment, as if he had just heard the worst possible news. "Your daughter-in-law has a piece valued at $3 million and doesn't know the police are looking for it?" I didn't know what it was worth. Nobody knew. I always thought it was costume jewelry. "We need you to give us your daughter-in-law's information immediately. Address, phone number, place of work. This is extremely urgent." With trembling hands, I gave them all the information. The youngest agent called for backup on his radio. The atmosphere in my living room had become dense, suffocating. I felt like I was in the middle of a nightmare from which I couldn't wake. "Am I going to jail?" I asked in a broken voice. "I didn't know anything, I swear to God." "Calm down, ma'am. If your story is true and it can be proven that your mother acquired the ring legally, you have nothing to worry about. But we need to recover the piece as soon as possible." They left 20 minutes later, leaving me a card with a phone number and strict orders to call if Ashley tried to contact me. I was left alone in my living room, surrounded by the heaviest silence I had ever experienced. $3 million, a stolen object, the FBI. My daughter-in-law with a jewel she didn't know was priceless. The phone rang an hour later. It was Ryan. But his voice didn't sound like usual. It sounded furious, uncontrolled, filled with a venom I had never heard from him before. "How could you? How the hell could you do this to Ashley?" "Ryan, I didn't—" 4 federal agents came to my office. They pulled me out in front of all my colleagues like I was a criminal. Ashley is at the precinct being questioned because of you. Son, I didn't know the ring. Shut up. Just shut up. My whole life you've been a burden. A damn burden who only knows how to ruin things for me. Ashley is right. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see us happy. Every word was a stab wound. Every insult was a nail in my heart. This was my son, my boy, the one I had protected, fed, loved with every cell in my body. Ryan, please, don't ever speak to me again. I don't want to see you ever again. I hope you die alone like the miserable person you are. He hung up. The phone slipped from my hands and fell to the floor. I stood in the middle of my living room, my legs shaking, my chest so tight I could barely breathe. The walls started spinning around me. I felt like I was drowning, that the air wasn't reaching my lungs, that my heart was going to burst inside my chest. I collapsed to the floor. Right there, on the threadbare rug I inherited from my mother-in-law, I curled into a ball, hugging my knees, and I began to cry like I hadn't cried since Ernest died. But these tears were different. They weren't tears of sadness. They were of something deeper. They were of absolute desolation. My son hated me. My daughter-in-law had robbed me. The police were investigating me. And all because of a ring I didn't even want to lend. I don't know how long I was like that. The sun moved across the sky, and the shadows shifted in my living room. My neighbors walked down the street, chatting, not knowing that on the other side of my door, I was falling apart. When I finally managed to get up, it was already night. My bones creaked. My back protested. I went to the kitchen like a zombie and opened the refrigerator. Almost empty, as always. A piece of dry cheese, 2 eggs, half a wrinkled tomato. I wasn't hungry anyway. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the table. On the wall in front of me hung the wall clock I bought for Ryan when he graduated from college. An expensive clock, paid for with 2 years of my savings from selling tamales outside the middle school. I had been so proud that day. My son, a college graduate, the first in the family. Now that same son was wishing me dead. I didn't sleep that night. I spent it sitting on my bed, the tin box of photographs on my lap, looking at every image of my life. Ryan as a baby in my arms. Ryan at his first communion in his white suit. Ryan graduating in his cap and gown, hugging me while I cried with happiness. In all those photos, I was there. I was always there. In every important moment, every achievement, every difficulty. When he got pneumonia at age 7 and I spent 3 sleepless nights at the hospital. When he failed math in high school and I paid for tutors with what I had saved to get my teeth fixed. When he met Ashley and asked to borrow money to take her to a fancy restaurant. I was always there. But now that he needed to defend me, to believe me, to love me even just a little, he wasn't. I woke up with swollen eyes and a headache that was splitting my skull. I didn't get up to make coffee. I didn't water the plants. I didn't turn on the radio like I did every morning. I just lay there, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, wondering if my son was right. Was I a burden? Was I to blame for everything? Did I deserve to die alone? The doorbell rang at noon. I didn't want to answer. It rang again, and again. Finally, I dragged myself to the door. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Carmen, an 80-year-old woman who lived 2 houses down. Isabel, honey, are you okay? I heard you crying last night and I was worried. I'm fine, Mrs. Carmen. She looked at me with those wise eyes that only women who have lived long and suffered much possess. Don't lie to me. I've known you for 30 years. I know when something is killing you on the inside. And there, standing in the doorway of my house with the midday sun burning my face, I told her everything. The words poured out like vomit, uncontrolled, unfiltered. I told her about the ring, about Ashley, about the police, about Ryan and his cruel words. Mrs. Carmen listened in silence. When I finished, she took my hands with her gnarled fingers. Listen to me carefully, Isabel Flores. Your son is blinded by that woman, but you are not guilty of anything. You only lent something that was yours, nothing more. And if that ring is worth millions, then that money is yours, not hers, not his, yours. Her words slowly seeped into me, like water into dry earth. But Ryan hates me, because he's scared, but he'll get over it. And if he doesn't, well, let him keep his hate. You've given enough. That night, for the first time in 3 days, I ate something. A scrambled egg with a tortilla. It tasted like cardboard, but I swallowed it all. And as I washed the plate, I looked at my bare hand and made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to die alone and miserable like Ryan wished for me. I was going to survive, even if I didn't know how, even if I didn't know if I had the strength, but I was going to try. Because maybe Mrs. Carmen was right. Maybe I had already given enough. The week that followed was a downward spiral into a hell I didn't know existed. Every day brought a new humiliation, a new pain added to the mountain of suffering I already carried on my stooped shoulders. On Thursday afternoon, as I was sweeping the entrance to my house, I saw my friend Lucia walk by on the other side of the street. For 20 years, we had greeted each other every morning, shared coffee on Sundays, lent each other sugar and eggs when one of us ran out. I raised my hand to wave as usual. She averted her gaze and quickened her pace, as if I were invisible, as if we had never been friends. On Friday, Mr. Thomas the baker, the same man who for years had saved me the biggest sweet rolls because he knew they were my favorite, overcharged me, and when I pointed out the mistake, he looked at me with contempt. "Ma'am, with all due respect, but everyone in the neighborhood knows you were dealing in stolen goods, and now you're going to complain to me about 50 cents?" His words shot through me like bullets. I felt all the customers in the bakery staring at me, whispering, judging me. I left without the bread, my cheeks burning with shame and my eyes filled with tears I refused to shed in public. I walked the 6 blocks back to my house with my head down, hearing the murmurs as I passed. "That's the one with the stolen jewel. They say she had it hidden for years. Poor daughter-in-law. The old woman probably wanted to get her thrown in jail. I always knew there was something off about that old lady." Every comment was a stone thrown at my back. Every sideways glance was like being spat on. The neighborhood where I had lived my entire adult life, where I had raised my son, where I knew every crack in every sidewalk and every neighbor by name, had now become enemy territory. I got home and locked the door. I slid down the wood until I was sitting on the floor, hugging my knees, feeling the walls close in on me. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be completely alone in the middle of a crowd. On Saturday, I didn't go out at all. I stayed locked inside, the curtains drawn, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood outside my windows. Children playing, street vendors shouting their wares, the music from neighboring houses, as if it all belonged to another world from which I had been permanently expelled. On Sunday morning, forcing myself to maintain some routine that would remind me I was still human, I went to Mass at St. Francis Parish, where I had gone my whole life. The same church where I baptized Ryan, where I buried Ernest, where every Sunday for 50 years I had kneeled to pray the rosary. I arrived early, as always, and sat in my usual pew, the third one on the left, next to the pillar with the statue of St. Rita. Slowly, the church filled up, but no one sat next to me. The entire pew remained empty, as if I had a contagious disease. Mrs. Mercedes, with whom I had shared that pew for 15 years, arrived, saw me, and went to sit on the other side of the church. She didn't even nod a hello. Throughout the Mass, I felt eyes staring at the back of my neck. Father Gonzalo, who had known me since he was a young priest newly arrived in the neighborhood, avoided eye contact with me when he gave communion. When I held out my hands to receive the host, I saw him hesitate for a second before placing it in my palm. Even God seemed to have abandoned me. I left the church before Mass ended, unable to bear another minute of that loneliness surrounded by people. I walked quickly toward my house, my eyes fixed on the ground, praying I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. But fate is cruel. On the corner of my street, 3 neighbors were gathered: Lupita, Rosa, and Estella, women with whom I had shared countless cups of coffee, organized Christmas parties, and cried with when we lost our husbands. Seeing me approach, their conversation stopped abruptly. "Good morning," I murmured, trying to walk past. "Isabel," Lupita said with a voice dripping with false sweetness, "did you sort out that business with the stolen ring? Because we're worried, aren't we, girls? We don't want a criminal living in our neighborhood." The other 2 snickered behind their hands. "I didn't steal anything. I managed to say with what little dignity I had left. It was my mother's. Oh, right. Your mother the maid, Rosa intervened sarcastically. I'm sure she just found it lying in the street and thought no one would claim it. My mother bought that ring legally. Of course, Estella added. That's why the police are looking for it. Because it was such a legal purchase. I couldn't take it anymore. I quickened my pace and left them behind, their laughter following me like rabid dogs. I entered my house and, for the first time in my life, locked the door in the middle of the day. I felt hunted, harassed, like a wounded animal desperately seeking a place to hide and lick its wounds. That afternoon, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of cold tea in my hands, I heard voices outside. I peeked through the window carefully, pulling the curtain back just an inch. There was a group of neighbors in front of my house. At least 10 people, maybe more. Some I knew, others I had only seen in passing. They were talking among themselves, pointing at my door, some with their arms crossed in a defiant posture. Don Hector, the head of the neighborhood association, knocked on my door. 3 loud bangs that echoed like thunder. Mrs. Flores, we need to talk to you. I stood frozen behind the curtain, my heart pounding against my ribs so hard I thought it would break free. Isabel Flores, we know you're in there. Open the door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I prayed silently for them to go away. Look, ma'am, Don Hector continued, raising his voice. We've come as a neighborhood committee to ask you to consider moving out of this neighborhood. Your presence is affecting the reputation of the entire community. We have decent families here. We don't want trouble with the police or scandals that lower our property values. Every word was a hammer blow to my already shattered self-esteem. My whole life in this neighborhood, all my memories, all my roots, reduced to a problem that needed to be eliminated. If you don't come out to talk, we'll understand that you accept our request. Another voice I didn't recognize added, We'll give you 1 month to find another place. They waited for 5 more minutes. I remained motionless behind my curtain, my legs trembling, biting my lower lip until it bled to keep from letting out the cry of anguish that threatened to escape my throat. Finally, they left. But the message was clear. I was no longer welcome, not even in my own home. That night, when it was completely dark and the streets were deserted, I found something on my doorstep. It was a rock, and tied to it with a string was a handwritten note in a crude script. Old thief, get out before we force you out. My hands trembled holding that piece of paper. It wasn't an empty threat. I knew it. I had heard stories of people being run out of the neighborhood for much less serious reasons. Entire families expelled because someone decided they no longer fit in, that they were no longer desirable. I put the note in my dresser drawer, next to the photographs of my mother and the memories of better times. Evidence of my humiliation, proof of how low I had fallen. On Monday morning, when I finally dared to go out to buy some food, because my refrigerator was completely empty and I hadn't eaten anything solid in 2 days, I found my gate spray-painted in red, a single word in jagged, grotesque letters. Thief. I stood in front of that word, feeling something inside me break irreparably. It wasn't just paint on metal, it was the final confirmation that my life as I knew it was over. I was no longer Isabel Flores, the respectable lady who sold tamales and tended her garden. Now I was Isabel Flores, the thief, the shame of the neighborhood, the old woman everyone spoke of with contempt. I tried to clean the paint with a rag and water, but I only managed to smear it more. I didn't have money to buy solvent. I could barely afford to eat, so it stayed there, gleaming obscenely in the sun, announcing my disgrace to everyone who passed by my street. I went into the corner 7-Eleven to buy something to eat, the cheapest thing I could find. The kid at the counter, who couldn't have been more than 20, looked at me suspiciously as he scanned my items. A can of beans, a package of tortillas, an instant soup. You gonna pay with stolen money too? He said under his breath, but loud enough for me to hear. Excuse me? Nothing, ma'am. That'll be $3.25. I gave him a $5 bill with trembling hands. He checked it against the light twice, as if he suspected it was fake too. He gave me my change by tossing it on the counter instead of placing it in my hand. I left with my plastic bag and the last shreds of my dignity in tatters. On the way back to my house, A truck pulled up beside me. It was Ryan. My heart leaped with hope. Maybe he had come to apologize. Maybe he had finally come to his senses. He rolled down the window, but he wasn't alone. Ashley was in the passenger seat, wearing dark sunglasses and a look of disgust. "Mom," Ryan said in a hard voice, without a hint of affection, "I came to tell you not to call me again. Ashley and I are changing our numbers. We want nothing to do with you. You embarrass me." "Ryan, son, please. I'm not your son. A son comes from a decent mother. You're just an old woman who ruined our lives." Ashley took off her sunglasses and looked me straight in the eye with an icy, triumphant smile. "Goodbye, Mrs. Flores. Thanks for the ring. It looked great in the party photos before the police showed up. I looked beautiful." And they sped off, leaving me standing in the middle of the street, my grocery bag hanging from my arm, watching my son's car disappear around the corner. Forever. That night, sitting on my bed, holding the tin box of photographs, I looked at the face of baby Ryan and wondered at what point I had lost my son. Was it when he met Ashley? When he got his finance job and started to be ashamed of me? Or was it much earlier, when I myself taught him that silent sacrifice was love, when I showed him that a mother must endure everything without complaint? Maybe I had raised the very man who now despised me. Tears fell on the old photograph, blurring the image of that baby who was once my whole world. Outside, dogs barked. The bells of St. Francis struck 11 at night. And I sat there, completely alone, wondering if maybe my son was right, if maybe I deserved all of this. 2 weeks passed in which I ceased to be a person and became a ghost. I got up every morning without reason, without purpose, only because my body had not yet learned to give up completely. The reflection I saw in the bathroom mirror was unrecognizable. A haggard woman, with dark circles as deep as caverns, her gray hair disheveled, her lips cracked from biting them to keep from screaming. I had lost weight. My blue dress with the little white flowers hung on my body as if it were 2 sizes too big. My collarbones protruded sharply, and my hands looked like those of a skeleton barely covered by a thin layer of wrinkled skin. I stopped eating more than once a day. Not because I wasn't hungry. My stomach rumbled constantly like a caged animal, but because the little money I had left had to last as long as possible. I didn't know how much longer I could stay in this house before they finally threw me out. The bills piled up on the kitchen table like cruel reminders of my failure. Electricity, water, property tax, phone, white envelopes with red letters screaming urgent and final notice. I looked at them every morning while drinking my watery coffee. I now used only half a spoonful of coffee to make the jar last longer, and felt the knot in my throat tighten until it almost suffocated me. On Tuesday, I received a call from Agent Salinas. "Mrs. Flores, I need you to come to the FBI field office tomorrow at 10 in the morning. We have news about the ring case." "What kind of news?" I asked with a trembling voice. "It's better if we speak in person. Bring any documents you have about your mother and the ring's origin." He hung up without giving me more information, leaving me with an icy terror running through my veins. I spent that whole night sleepless, rummaging through drawers and boxes, desperately searching for any paper that could save me. I found my mother's birth certificate, her old, worn-out voter registration card, a few letters she had sent from Spain when she worked there in the 60s, but nothing specific about the ring. The next morning at 8, I showered with the cold water that came from the shower head because I hadn't paid the gas bill. I dressed in my only decent outfit, a white blouse I had hand-washed the night before and a black skirt that smelled of mothballs from being stored so long. I combed my hair back into a tight bun and looked at myself one last time in the mirror. I looked like what I was, a defeated woman going to receive her sentence. The bus dropped me off 3 blocks from the FBI offices. I had to walk under the scorching midday sun, feeling the sweat soak my back and underarms. My old shoes pinched and I had blisters on my heels. But I kept going because what other choice did I have? The police building was imposing, made of gray concrete and dark windows that didn't let you see inside. Armed guards watched the entrance. I had to go through a metal detector and open my purse for them to check its contents. My wallet with barely $20, my Medicare card, my mother's letters wrapped in a rubber band, an embroidered handkerchief, the evidence of an entire life fit in a handbag. They made me wait in a room with hard plastic chairs and an air conditioner that was so cold I started to shiver. Other people were waiting too, some with lawyers, others with family members. I was alone. I was always alone. After 40 minutes, a secretary whose heels clicked on the marble floor called my name. I followed her down a long hallway lined with offices with closed doors. Finally, we entered a conference room where Agent Salinas was waiting for me, accompanied by an elegant woman in her 50s in a pantsuit, holding a leather briefcase. "Mrs. Flores, have a seat," Salinas said, pointing to a chair. "This is Patricia Vega, a specialist in art and cultural heritage from the museum in Madrid." I sat on the edge of the chair, my hands clutching my purse on my lap, expecting the worst. Ms. Vega opened her briefcase and took out several documents. "Mrs. Flores, after an exhaustive investigation that included reviewing historical archives in both the U.S. and Spain, we have reached a conclusion." My heart was beating so hard I was sure they could hear it. "Your mother, Rosa Mendez, did indeed work at the residence of Don Alejandro Ruiz de Castro in Seville between 1958 and 1962. Don Alejandro was a private collector who legally acquired several pieces at auctions during the 1940s and 50s, before cultural heritage laws became stricter." The specialist turned a page and continued. "In 1960, Don Alejandro sold several pieces from his private collection before retiring. We found the sales receipt for the ring, made out to Rosa Mendez for the sum of 500 pesetas. The transaction was completely legal." I didn't understand. "Did that mean—" "What your mother didn't know," Agent Salinas interjected, "is that the ring was reported stolen from the Madrid Museum in 1978, 18 years after she bought it. It turns out Don Alejandro had acquired it from a dealer who was later found to be part of an antiques trafficking ring, but that was discovered much later." "So, my mother did nothing wrong?" I asked in a choked voice. "No, ma'am. Your mother was a good faith buyer. She paid for an object without knowing its true origin. That absolves her of any criminal liability. And you as well." Tears began to roll down my cheeks, and I couldn't stop them. They weren't tears of joy. They were tears of rage, of helplessness, of accumulated pain. All this suffering, all this humiliation, all these weeks of hell, for nothing? "But there's more," Ms. Vega said with something that almost looked like a smile. "The museum in Madrid is prepared to acquire the ring by paying you its market value as compensation for the trouble caused. $3 million. The world stopped. $3 million. "What?" was all I could say. "It's a unique 16th century piece. Its historical value is incalculable, and legally, as the legitimate heir of the original buyer, you are entitled to that compensation." But I don't want the money," I stammered. "I just wanted my mom's ring back." Agent Salinas looked at me with something resembling compassion. "Ma'am, the ring must return to the museum. It's cultural heritage. But that money is yours by right. No one can take it from you. Not even Ryan? Or Ashley? Not even them. The payment will be made directly in your name, to your personal bank account." I sat there, unable to process what I was hearing. After weeks of being treated like garbage, like a criminal, like the shame of the neighborhood, it turned out I was the victim. And now, suddenly, I was a millionaire. "We need you to sign these documents," the specialist said, pushing several papers toward me, authorizing the transfer of the ring to the museum and accepting the monetary compensation. I took the pen she offered me with trembling hands. I looked at the documents, but the letters blurred before my tear-filled eyes. I thought of my mother, of her life of sacrifices, of how she worked to exhaustion without ever receiving anything in return. I thought of that ring she had kept her whole life, not knowing it was worth a fortune, only because it reminded her of a better time. And I thought of myself, of everything I had endured, of everything I had lost. I signed each page with renewed determination. "How long will the transfer take?" I asked. "Approximately 2 weeks. The Bank of Spain needs to process the international payment, but I can assure you, the money will arrive." I left that building feeling like I was walking on clouds. The sun that had previously burned me now caressed my skin. The air that had previously suffocated me now filled my lungs with sweetness. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope, but that hope lasted exactly until I got home. Because there, waiting for me in front of my gate, still with the word thief painted in red, were Ryan and Ashley. And they weren't alone. They had a man in a suit and briefcase with them who could only be a lawyer. Ryan was holding several documents. His face showed a mixture of anxiety and determination that chilled my blood. "Mom," he said in a falsely conciliatory voice, "we need to talk. It's about the money from the ring. Ashley and I have consulted with a lawyer, and it turns out that as your son, I have a legal right to a portion of that inheritance." Ashley smiled behind him, that shark-like smile I knew so well. "Besides," Ryan continued, "the ring passed through my hands when Ashley wore it. Technically, I'm also part of the chain of custody. Mr. Ramirez here," he gestured to the man in the suit, "says we can claim up to 40% of the payment." The lawyer nodded with a serious professional expression. "The law is very clear in these cases, ma'am. Family assets must be distributed equitably among direct descendants." I stood there looking at the three of them, at my son, who had wished me dead 2 weeks earlier, at my daughter-in-law, who had pried the ring from my finger with contempt, at the lawyer, who didn't even know me but had already decided how much of my pain his client deserved to keep. And something inside me, something that had been bending and cracking for weeks, finally snapped. But not in the way they expected. It didn't snap inward, turning into defeat. It snapped outward, turning into steel. "No," I said, in a voice I didn't recognize as my own. A firm, clear voice without a tremor. "What do you mean, no?" Ryan blinked, confused. I said no, that money is mine. The ring was mine. Your grandmother gave it to me. And after everything you've done to me, you will not receive a single cent. Ashley let out a disbelieving laugh. "Did you hear that, Ryan? Your mother's lost her mind. Do you really think you can refuse? We have a lawyer. We have legal rights." I reached into my purse and pulled out the card Agent Salinas had given me. "And I have the FBI on my side. And signed documents proving that money is exclusively mine because I was the sole direct heir of Rosa Mendez. You are nothing. You have no rights." The lawyer cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Well, ma'am, technically nothing," I interrupted him. "You can all leave my property right now or I'll call the police and tell them you're harassing me." Ryan turned red with anger. "How dare you? I'm your son. You stopped being my son the day you told me to die alone. Now get out." My legs were shaking, but I held my posture firm, my back straight, looking them squarely in the eye without flinching. Ashley pulled Ryan by the arm. "Let's go. This old woman isn't worth it. We'll figure out how to get that money from her." They finally left, but not before Ryan turned back one last time with a look of pure hatred. "You're going to regret this. You'll be all alone with your money, and you're going to regret it." I closed the gate behind them and leaned against it, feeling my whole body begin to shake as the adrenaline wore off. I had said no. For the first time in 73 years of life, I had said no, and the sky hadn't fallen. The next few days were strange. Not better, not worse, just different, as if I had crossed an invisible border into a territory I didn't know, where the rules were no longer the same ones I had followed my entire life. I woke up on Wednesday with a pain in my chest that scared me at first. I thought it was a heart attack, that Ryan was going to get his wish after all and I would die alone. But after a few minutes, I realized it wasn't physical pain. It was the weight of guilt. That guilt that women like me carry from childhood. The one that teaches us that saying no is selfish, that putting ourselves first makes us a bad mother, a bad wife, a bad person. I got out of bed slowly, my bones creaking their morning protest. I went to the kitchen and made coffee, still watery because the jar was almost empty, and sat in my usual spot. But this time, instead of looking out the window at the empty patio, I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last time I did something just because I wanted to. I couldn't remember a single instance. My entire life had been an endless chain of doing what others expected of me. Marrying Ernest because my father said he was a good man. Leaving school to work and help at home because it was my duty as the eldest daughter. Having Ryan because that's what wives did. Working washing other people's clothes, selling tamales, cleaning houses because someone had to pay the bills. Caring for Ernest when he got sick, for 2 years without a break, because the wedding vows said, in sickness and in health. Giving Ryan my home, my time, my money, because that's what good mothers did. And what had I gotten in return? A word painted on my gate, a son who wished me dead, an entire neighborhood that spat on me. That morning, with the cold coffee in my hands, I made a decision. If the world had already judged and condemned me, if I had already lost everything I could possibly lose, then I had nothing left to fear. And without fear, I could start living for myself. I took a rag and a bucket of soapy water and went out to clean the gate. The red paint had dried and was hard to remove, but I scrubbed with force, putting the accumulated rage of weeks into every movement. I scrubbed until my arms ached, until sweat soaked my back, until the word thief had become faint, blurry smudges of pale pink. Mrs. Carmen walked by and stopped when she saw me. "Isabel, what are you doing? Let the boys help you with that." "I don't need help. I can do it myself." She looked at me with those wise eyes that see everything. "Yes, honey, I can see that you can." I finished cleaning at noon, my hands red and blistered, but with something like satisfaction filling my chest. It was my gate, my house, and no one was going to mark it with their judgments again. On Thursday, I received an unexpected call. It was a woman who introduced herself as Montserrat Delgado, an attorney specializing in family law. "Mrs. Flores, I'm contacting you because Agent Salinas passed along your information. He told me about your situation, and I believe you might need legal counsel, particularly because your son and daughter-in-law may try to claim the money through legal channels." "And how much do you charge, Ms. Delgado? Because I don't have money to pay for lawyers." "I'm not going to charge you anything, ma'am. Your case interests me. I've worked with many older women who are financially exploited by their own families. If you'll allow me, I'd like to represent you pro bono." Something in her voice made me trust her. It had that firm but kind tone that reminded me of my mother when she stood up for someone at the market. And what would I have to do? For now, nothing. Just document every interaction with your son and daughter-in-law. If they send you messages, save them. If they contact you, record the conversations if you can. Any evidence of harassment or manipulation will help us if they decide to sue you. I accepted her help, not because I had the strength to fight, but because I was tired of feeling helpless. That afternoon, sitting in my living room with an old notebook I found in a drawer, I began to write. At first, I didn't know what I was writing. I just let the words flow without a filter, without order, without any pretense of making sense. I wrote about my mother, about how she broke her back working so her children could eat. I wrote about Ernest, about the good years before the drinking took him to a place I couldn't reach. I wrote about baby Ryan, about how he smelled of powder and milk, about how his tiny hands would cling to my finger when I held him. I wrote about the exact moment I stopped recognizing my son. It was on his 30th birthday, 3 years ago. I had made him his favorite Tres Leches cake, and I had saved for 2 months to buy him a shirt I knew he liked. He came to my house with Ashley, opened the gift without even looking at me, and said, "Oh, Mom, this is from a department store. I don't wear these brands anymore." Ashley laughed. Ryan did too, as if my effort was a joke, and I laughed along with them, because that's what I always did. I laughed at my own humiliation to make others feel comfortable. Tears fell onto the notebook page, smudging the ink, but I kept writing. On Friday, Mrs. Carmen knocked on my door with a pot of chicken soup. "So you can eat something warm, honey. You're nothing but skin and bones." "Mrs. Carmen, you didn't have to." "Of course I had to. And don't you dare say no, because you've learned that word now, and I don't want you using it on me." We laughed. It was the first time I had laughed in weeks, and the sound came out rusty, like a door that hasn't been opened in years. We ate together in my kitchen. She told me neighborhood gossip that Mr. Thomas the baker was having trouble with the IRS, that Lupita's daughter had fought with her husband, that Rosa had been seen leaving a motel with a man who wasn't her husband. "You see?" Mrs. Carmen said. "Everyone has their secrets, their shames, but they're very good at pointing out everyone else's. Then why did they treat me like that? I never hurt anyone." "Because you're a woman, because you're old, because it's easier to attack someone who's alone than to admit their own miseries." Her words cut deep. So what do I do now? The money is going to arrive in a few days, but I don't know what to do with it. I've never had anything. Mrs. Carmen took my hand. First, you get out of this neighborhood. Find a place where nobody knows you, where you can start over. Second, you buy yourself nice things. Clothes that make you feel alive, not just covered. Third, you do everything you never could because you were too busy taking care of others. But what if Ryan is right? What if I end up alone? Honey, you're already alone. The difference is that now you'll be alone with dignity. On Saturday, I dared to leave the neighborhood for the first time in weeks. I took the bus downtown to San Antonio and walked along the river walk, feeling the sun on my face, listening to the murmur of tourists and families. No one looked at me with contempt. No one knew me. I was invisible in the right way, not because I was despicable, but because I was just one among thousands. I entered a church that wasn't St. Francis, the San Fernando Cathedral, huge and majestic, with its columns soaring toward the sky and its stained glass windows painting the floor with impossible colors. I sat in a pew at the back, and for the first time in my life, I didn't pray for others. I prayed for myself. God, if you exist, if you can hear me, give me strength. Not to forgive, because I can't yet, but give me the strength to move forward, to not let myself die before I've had a chance to live. I left feeling a little lighter. I walked toward Market Square and stopped at a jewelry stand. Silver earrings, necklaces with colorful stones, delicate bracelets. The woman at the stall smiled at me. Looking for anything special, ma'am? I pointed to a pair of simple silver earrings with a turquoise blue stone. Those. Very good taste. They're $20. I had brought the last $30 I had with me. It was crazy to spend 2/3 of it on something I didn't need. But I bought them. And when the woman wrapped them in tissue paper and handed them to me with a genuine smile, I felt something like joy. On the way home, with my small paper bag in hand, I ran into Lupita and Rosa at the corner. I braced myself for their venomous comments, for their cruel snickers. But something had changed. I didn't look down. I didn't speed up. I looked them directly in the eye and gave them a nod. Surprised by my audacity, they said nothing. They just watched me pass. That night, in front of my bathroom mirror, I put on the new earrings. The turquoise blue shone against my wrinkled skin, against my gray hair, against everything I was. They didn't make me look younger. They didn't make me look prettier. But they made me look alive. On Sunday, I didn't go to Mass. Instead, I stayed in my garden, pulling the weeds that had grown during the weeks I was too sunk in misery to care for it. I tore out each weed viciously, dug into the earth with my bare hands, and planted new bougainvillea seeds I had bought at the market. My neighbors passed by and watched me, some with curiosity, others still with contempt. But I didn't care anymore. Let them look, let them judge. I was busy building something new. On Monday afternoon, as I was watering my newly planted seeds, I saw Sebastian, my 12-year-old grandson, standing in front of my gate. He was alone, his school backpack slung over one shoulder, biting his lip the way he did when he was little and scared. My heart sped up. I wanted to run to him, to hug him, to tell him how much I'd missed him, but I held back. "Hi, Grandma," he said in a small voice. "Hello, Sebastian. Can I come in?" I hesitated for a moment. Was this a trap from Ryan? Had he sent him to manipulate me? But the look in the boy's eyes was genuine. Scared, but genuine. "Come in." We went into the house. I poured him a glass of hibiscus tea I had made that morning. We sat at the kitchen table in an uncomfortable silence. "Dad doesn't know I'm here," he finally said. "He told me I could never see you again, that you're a bad person. And what do you think?" He shrugged. "I don't know. I just know that I miss you, and that Ashley says mean things about you. But when I was 5 and fell off my bike, you were the one who cleaned my knee and made me cookies until I stopped crying." Tears threatened to spill, but I held them back. "Your father is angry with me right now, and he has a right to be if that's how he feels. But are you a thief, like they say? No. But even if I explain it, they won't believe me. Sometimes people need to blame someone for their problems, and I'm an easy target." Sebastian nodded as if he understood more than a boy his age should. Are you not going to make tamales on Sundays anymore? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. I miss them. And there, with those 3 simple words from a 12-year-old boy, something inside me broke again. But this time it wasn't painful. It was liberating. Then you come on Sundays and I'll teach you how to make them. His eyes lit up. Really? Really? But it has to be our secret. Just you and me. Can you keep a secret? Yes. Then it's a deal. He left half an hour later, with a smile I hadn't seen on his face in a long time, and I stayed in my kitchen, thinking that maybe, just maybe, not all was lost. Maybe in the rubble of my destroyed life, there were still seeds that could bloom. Tuesday dawned with a gray sky that threatened a storm. I woke before dawn, as always, but this time I didn't stay in bed staring at the ceiling. I got up with purpose. I had things to do. Montserrat, my lawyer, had made it clear I needed to document everything, so I began to organize papers. I pulled from drawers and boxes every receipt, every statement, every piece of evidence of the years I had financially supported my family, receipts for Ryan's college tuition that I paid, statements showing the $500 I loaned him, which he never paid back, for the down payment on his first car, hospital bills from when Ashley had Sebastian, which I covered because they were tight on money at the moment. I laid everything out on the dining room table in neat piles. Years of sacrifice translated into yellowed papers and faded ink. If Ryan wanted to fight over money, I had proof of how much I had given him without expecting anything in return. While organizing the documents, I found something that stopped me in my tracks. A letter, written in my own hand, but from so many years ago I barely recognized the script. It was dated the day Ryan turned 15. I opened it with trembling hands and began to read. My dearest Ryan, today you turn 15 and you're becoming a man. I want you to know that everything I've done, every sacrifice, every bit of hard work, has been to give you a better life than I had. I don't want you to have to wash clothes like your grandmother. I don't want you to break your back like me. I want you to study, to be someone important, to have everything I never could. And when you're grown and successful, you don't owe me anything. Just be happy. That's all a mother can ask for. I closed the letter, feeling something twist inside my chest. I had planted the seed myself. I had taught him that he owed me nothing, that I was just a stepping stone for him to climb higher. And now I was surprised that he treated me exactly as I had taught him to. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was an unknown number. Mrs. Isabel Flores? Yes, this is she. This is Santander Bank. We're calling to confirm that we've received the international wire transfer from Spain for the amount of $3 million. The number was so absurd it meant nothing to me. 3 million. He could have said 3,000 or 3 billion, and it would have felt just as unreal. Ma'am? Are you there? Yes. Yes, I'm here. We need you to come to the branch to sign documents and activate your account. Can you come in tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Yes, I'll be there. I hung up the phone and sat in my chair, staring into space. $3 million. Enough money to live 100 lifetimes without working. Money my mother had worn on her finger for years without knowing its value. Money that was now mine. But for what? To buy things? To travel? What good is money when you have no one to share your happiness with? I got up and went out to the patio. The plants I had sown the day before looked fragile under the cloudy sky. I watered them carefully, talking to them the way my mother used to talk to her potted plants. Grow strong. You're not going to disappoint me, are you? Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the first drops of rain began to fall. I stood there, letting the water soak my hair, my clothes, my skin, letting it wash away all the accumulated pain, all the emotional filth I was carrying. When I finally went inside, dripping water all over the living room, I saw myself in the hallway mirror. A drenched old woman, her hair stuck to her skull, shivering with cold. But her eyes were more alive than they had been in years. That night, as the storm raged outside, I received a text message from a number I didn't recognize. Mom, it's Ryan. I changed my number. We need to talk. Please, it's urgent. My first instinct was to reply immediately, but something stopped me. Instead of answering, I called my lawyer. Ms. Delgado? My son just texted me from a new number. What do I do? Don't respond yet. Forward the message to me. And if he writes again, save everything. This could be evidence of harassment. I followed her advice. 20 minutes later, another message arrived. Mom, please. I just want to talk. I know I hurt you. I'm sorry. And then another. Ashley and I had a fight. She says this is my fault. She says I should have defended the ring from the start. And one more. Are you going to answer or not? Don't be childish. And there he was. The real Ryan. 3 apology texts before he resorted to insults. That's how long his remorse lasted. I didn't reply to any of them. I turned off my phone and went to sleep, with the sound of rain hitting my roof as my only company. Wednesday woke with a mental clarity I hadn't experienced in decades. I dressed in my best clothes, which wasn't much, but it was clean and dignified, and took the bus to the bank downtown. The branch was enormous, with gleaming marble floors and employees in impeccable suits. I felt out of place, like a cockroach in a palace, but I walked up to the information desk with my head held high. Good morning. I'm here about an international wire transfer. The young woman behind the desk looked me up and down with barely concealed disdain. Name? Isabel Flores. She typed on her computer. Her eyes went wide. 1 moment, ma'am. I'll take you to the manager. 5 minutes later, I was sitting in a luxurious office with leather armchairs and air conditioning so cold I started to shiver. The manager, a man in his 40s with brilliantly white teeth and a designer suit, smiled at me with a warmth I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. Mrs. Flores, it's a pleasure to have you. I understand you have a significant transfer to process. Yes, sir. Allow me to explain your options. With an amount of this magnitude, I would recommend opening an investment account. We could place the funds in financial instruments that would generate monthly returns of approximately $10,000. $10,000 a month. More than I had earned in entire years of washing clothes. And if I just want the money in a normal account? Of course, it's your decision. But let me offer you free financial advisory services. With all due respect, ma'am, a sum like this can attract people who may not have your best interests at heart. I thought of Ryan, of Ashley, of their lawyer. Can I put restrictions on the account? Make it so no one else can access the money? Absolutely. In fact, I strongly recommend it. And I also suggest you consider drawing up a legal will specifying exactly how you want your assets distributed when you're no longer with us. We spent 2 hours reviewing documents, signing papers, setting up security measures. The manager assigned me a personal financial advisor, a young man named Marcos, who patiently explained how everything worked, as if he were teaching a child. When I left the bank, I had a debit card in my purse with access to more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But more importantly, I had legal protection. No one, not Ryan, not Ashley, not any lawyer, could touch that money without my explicit authorization. I walked through the downtown streets aimlessly, feeling the weight of the card in my purse as if I were carrying a bomb. I stopped in front of a clothing store I had looked at from the outside for years, but had never entered. The mannequins in the window wore pretty dresses, simple but elegant. I went in. The saleswoman, another young girl who probably saw me as an old woman who was going to steal something, approached cautiously. Looking for anything in particular, ma'am? A dress. Something pretty. For me. For a special occasion? For every day. I want something that makes me feel alive. Something in my voice must have touched her, because her expression changed from wary to understanding. Come with me, ma'am. I think I have just the thing. I tried on 5 dresses. None of them fit perfectly. My 73-year-old body wasn't made for modern clothes. But we finally found one. A jade green dress with 3/4 sleeves and a cut that hid my stomach and accentuated what little I had left of a waist. It looks beautiful on you, the girl said sincerely. That color brightens your face. I looked at myself in the mirror. It wasn't the old, defeated Isabel who had walked in. It was someone different. Someone who still deserved nice things. I'll take it. Excellent. That will be $95. I took out my new card. The girl swiped it through the terminal and we waited. For a moment, I was terrified it wouldn't work, that it was all a mistake, that the money had never arrived. But the terminal beeped its approval. I left the store with my new dress in a stylish bag, feeling like an imposter, but also excited in a way I had forgotten existed. I passed a shoe store, then a perfume shop. In each place, I bought something small, something I would normally have denied myself because I didn't need it, or it was too expensive. Comfortable but pretty shoes, a soft perfume that smelled of lavender, a brightly colored scarf. When I got home, loaded with bags, Mrs. Carmen was watering the plants in front of her door. "Isabel, did you go shopping?" "Yes," I said, feeling ridiculously happy. "I bought myself things." "Nah, that's the way, honey. It's about time." I went into my house and spread all my purchases out on the bed. The green dress, the soft leather brown shoes, the perfume in its elegant bottle, the scarf that looked like a woven rainbow. And there, alone in my room, I tried everything on. I put on the dress, the shoes, the scarf. I sprayed perfume on my neck and wrists. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, the same one where I had watched myself sinking into misery for weeks. And for the first time in my adult life, I saw myself, not as Ryan's mother, not as Ernest's wife, not as Rosa's daughter, just as Isabel, a 73-year-old woman with wrinkles that told stories, with gray hairs that spoke of survival, with calloused hands that proved her strength. And I cried, but not from sadness. I cried because I was seeing myself for the first time. I cried because I had spent 73 years being invisible, even to myself. The phone rang. It was Ryan again, now calling from his new number. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then I received a message. "If you don't answer, I'm coming to your house. I need to talk to you now." I took a screenshot of the message and sent it to my lawyer. Her reply came in seconds. "Perfect. If he comes to your house, call the police immediately. This is harassment, and we can use it against him if he sues." That night, I slept with my new dress hanging on the back of a chair where I could see it from the bed. A reminder that something had changed, that I had changed, and that Ryan, Ashley, and the whole neighborhood that had judged me were going to have to get used to the new Isabel. Because the old Isabel, the one who swallowed insults, who apologized for existing, who made herself small so others could feel big, was dead. And in her place, someone who was just learning how to live had been born, but she was ready to try. Thursday arrived with a bright sun that seemed to mock the storms of the previous days. I woke up early, but this time not out of habit, but anticipation. Today was the day. I had made a decision during the night, one of those decisions that completely changes the course of your life. I was going to leave this neighborhood, not because I was giving up, but because I deserved a place where I could breathe without every corner reminding me of my humiliation, a place where no one knew who I was, where no one would point at me, where I could simply be Isabel without the weight of everything I had lost. I called a real estate agency I found in the paper. A woman named Gabriella answered with a professional voice. "Good morning, Valley Real Estate. How can I help you?" "Good morning. I'm looking to rent a house. Something small, simple, but in a quiet neighborhood." "Of course, ma'am. What is your monthly budget?" I thought of the $10,000 a month my investment would generate, an obscene amount, up to $1,000 a month. "Perfect. I have several options. Could you come to the office tomorrow so I can show you some properties?" "Yes, I'll be there." After hanging up, I sat in my living room looking at the cracked walls, the old furniture, the water stains on the ceiling. This house had been my refuge for decades. I had raised my son here. I had mourned my husband here. I had lived my entire adult life here. But it was no longer a home. It was a prison of painful memories. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I got up cautiously. After Ryan's threats, any unexpected visitor made me nervous. I looked through the peephole. It was Ashley. Alone. My first instinct was not to open the door. But something in her body language, the slumped shoulders, the way she stared at the floor, made me hesitate. I opened the door but left the security chain on. "What do you want?" Ashley looked up. She wasn't wearing makeup, which was unusual for her. Her eyes were swollen, as if she had been crying. Her perfectly straight blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt, not her usual designer clothes. "Mrs. Flores, I need to talk to you, please." "I have nothing to talk to you about." I know, and I understand. But please, just 5 minutes. Then I'll leave and never bother you again." There was something different in her voice. Something broken. Against my better judgment, I removed the chain and opened the door. 5 minutes. We went into the living room. I didn't offer her coffee or water. This wasn't a social call. She sat on the edge of the sofa, wringing her hands in her lap. I remained standing, my arms crossed, waiting. Ryan and I were getting a divorce. I didn't expect that. I kept my expression neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not. And you have every right not to be." An uncomfortable silence. "I came to tell you that I was the one who convinced him to treat you that way. I was the one who put it in his head that you were a burden, that you were holding us back, that your old things made us look poor." "And why are you telling me this now?" "Because I realized something horrible, ma'am. Now that Ryan doesn't have access to your money, now that his partners at work found out about the ring scandal and are considering letting him go, now that everything is falling apart, he's treating me exactly the way I taught him to treat you." A tear rolled down her cheek. "Yesterday, he told me I was a burden, that he should have married someone better, that I ruined his life." The same words, ma'am. The exact same words I put in his mouth to say to you. I finally sat down, not because I felt compassion, but because my legs were tired of holding the weight of this conversation. "And what do you want me to do with that information, Ashley?" "Nothing. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. I just came to tell you that you were right, about everything. And that I hope that when my children grow up, they don't treat me the way I helped Ryan treat you." She got up to leave. "Ashley." She stopped. "Are the children okay?" She nodded. "Sebastian asks about you. I told him he couldn't visit, but he's stubborn. If he shows up, it's because he snuck away, not because I sent him. He already came, on Monday." Her eyes widened in surprise. "Really?" "Really. And he can come whenever he wants. But you and Ryan are not welcome in my house. Understood?" "Understood." After she left, I sat in my living room processing what had just happened. I didn't feel satisfaction seeing her destroyed. I didn't feel joy at her suffering. I just felt a deep sadness for all the lost time, for all the unnecessary pain. The next day, I went to the real estate agency. Gabriella turned out to be a woman in her 30s, efficient and kind without being condescending. She showed me photos of 3 properties in Alamo Heights, a quiet, established neighborhood known for its calm streets and mature trees. "I like this one," I said, pointing to a small house with a garden, white walls, and a patio with a lemon tree. "Excellent choice. Would you like to go see it today?" We went in her car. The drive out of my neighborhood took 20 minutes. As we moved away, I felt something in my chest loosen, as if with every mile that separated me from that house, those streets, those memories, I could breathe a little deeper. The house was perfect, small but bright, with large windows that let in the sun. The kitchen had blue and white tiles. The bathroom was modest but clean. The main bedroom had a spacious closet and a window overlooking the backyard where the fruit-laden lemon tree swayed in the breeze. "I'll take it," I said without a second thought. "Don't you want to see the other options?" "No. This is it. When can I move in?" Gabriella smiled. "If you can pay the deposit and 2 months' rent up front, you can move in on Monday." I paid for everything right there with my new card. $2,000 that left my account without me even feeling the hit. Money that once would have represented months of work was now just a number on a screen. Back at my old house, I started to pack. I didn't have much to take. My clothes, my photographs, a few kitchen items that had sentimental value. The furniture would stay. The bed where I had slept with Ernest, the dining table where I had served thousands of dinners. All of that belonged to the old Isabel. On Saturday, Mrs. Carmen came to help me. She brought cardboard boxes she'd gotten from the supermarket, and together we packed my entire life into 6 containers. "Are you sure about this, honey?" "More sure than I've been about anything in my life. I'm going to miss you. Who's going to keep me company for my morning coffee? Alamo Heights isn't that far. You can visit me any time." She hugged me tightly, her fragile bones against mine. "I'm proud of you. Your mother would be proud too." That night, my last night in the house, I couldn't sleep. I walked through each room in the dark, touching the walls, saying goodbye to the ghosts that lived there. The ghost of Ernest in his favorite chair, The ghost of young Ryan playing in the yard. The ghost of the Isabel I used to be. Submissive, self-sacrificing, invisible. Goodbye, I whispered to the walls. Thank you for protecting me all these years. But it's time for me to go. On Sunday morning, the moving truck I had hired arrived. 2 young men loaded my 6 boxes as if they weighed nothing. In 30 minutes, my whole life was in the back of a truck. Before I left, I taped a note to the door for the landlord, explaining that I was leaving and that he could keep the furniture or do whatever he wanted with it. I left the keys in an envelope under the door. I got in the truck with the movers. As we drove away, I looked one last time at my street, my neighborhood, the life I was leaving behind. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation. The house in Alamo Heights smelled of lemon-scented cleaner. The movers unloaded my boxes in the living room and left. I stood alone in my new space, listening to the silence. A different kind of silence from my old house. This one wasn't heavy with pain. It was just quiet. I unpacked slowly, placing each object with care. The photographs of my mother on the living room shelf, my clothes in the closet, now with plenty of room to spare, the dishes in the new kitchen. As I arranged everything, I realized I was smiling. In the afternoon, I went for a walk in my new neighborhood. The streets were clean, peaceful. People who passed by nodded at me, a simple greeting without knowing me, without judging me. No one knew who I was. No one knew my story. To them, I was just another new neighbor, and I felt free. On Sunday night, exactly as we had agreed, Sebastian knocked on my door. He had taken 2 buses, using the allowance money he'd saved just to keep our secret appointment. Ready to teach me how to make tamales, Grandma? Ready. We spent 3 hours in my new kitchen, mixing masa, filling husks, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about school, about his friends, about how his parents fought all the time now. I told him about the new house, about the neighborhood, about how sometimes you have to start over to be able to move forward. And my dad? He asked as we wrapped a tamal. Are you never going to forgive him? I don't know, honey. Maybe someday. Or maybe not. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. Can I keep coming? Always. This will always be your home too. When he left, with a bag full of tamales to take home, I stayed in my kitchen cleaning up. My hands smelled of corn dough, lard, and cumin, familiar smells in a new space. And for the first time in 73 years, I felt at home, not because I had a place to live, but because I finally felt at home with myself. 3 months passed in my new life. 3 months in which I learned that solitude can be a blessing when you choose it yourself, instead of having it forced upon you. My days had a different routine now. I woke to the sound of birdsong instead of the noise of trucks and street vendors. I drank my coffee looking at the lemon tree in the garden instead of the cracked walls of a neglected patio. I had started doing something I never thought I would do. Take care of myself, not just the basics of eating and bathing, but really caring for myself. I walked every morning around the neighborhood park, feeling how my legs, which had once only served to carry the weight of others, now took me to places I chose. I bought myself fresh flowers every Friday at the farmer's market and put them in a vase in my living room, just because I liked looking at them. I cooked meals that I liked, not the ones others expected. Sebastian came every Sunday, religiously. He never missed a single one. Sometimes he brought his sister Valerie, a quiet 10-year-old girl with enormous eyes that watched me with a mixture of curiosity and fear. At first, she didn't talk much, just sat in the kitchen observing as I taught Sebastian. But the 3rd Sunday she came while I was kneading bread. Valerie asked timidly, Grandma, is it true you're rich now? Who told you that? Mom, she tells Dad that you became a millionaire and you should share with us because we're your family. Sebastian nudged her. Valerie, you're not supposed to say that. I'm just asking. I stopped kneading and sat down across from her. Yes, honey, I have money now. But that money is mine. Do you know why? She shook her head. Because for my whole life, I gave everything I had to other people. And when I needed them, when I was alone and scared, no one was there for me. So this money is my reward for surviving, and I'm going to use it to live well for the rest of my life. What about us? Dad says you're going to disinherit us. The word hit me like a slap. Disinherit. As if they had an automatic right to what was mine. Valerie, listen to me carefully. Your father and I have grown-up problems that you don't need to understand yet. But you and Sebastian will always have a place in my life and in my heart. When you're older, I'm going to make sure you have something to help you start your lives. But I will be the one to decide that. Not your father. That night, after the children left, I called Montserrat. Ms. Delgado, I need to make a will. I think that's very wise, Mrs. Flores. Do you already have an idea of how you want to distribute your assets? Yes. I want to leave each of my grandchildren a trust fund they can access when they turn 25. Enough to buy a house or start a business. But I want Ryan and Ashley to be unable to touch that money under any circumstances. That's entirely possible. And the rest? The rest? I don't know yet. But I know I don't want Ryan to receive anything. Does that make me a bad person? Ma'am, after everything you've told me, that makes you a person who is finally setting healthy boundaries. Schedule an appointment, and we'll draw up the will next week. On Tuesday, I received an unexpected call. It was Father Gonzalo, the priest from St. Francis in my old neighborhood. Isabel, my child, how are you? His familiar voice brought a mix of nostalgia and resentment. I'm well, Father. Surprised by your call. Yes, well, I heard that you moved, and I wanted to apologize. Apologize? For not defending you when the whole neighborhood turned on you. For avoiding you in church. For not being the shepherd I should have been. I let myself get carried away by gossip and judgment, when my job was to show compassion. Tears burned my eyes. I didn't expect this. Father, You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know that I was wrong, and that I've been praying for you. Do you forgive me? Yes, Father. I forgive you. After hanging up, I sat in my garden under the lemon tree and cried, but not from sadness. I cried because forgiveness, real forgiveness, wasn't for the other person. It was to free myself from the weight of resentment. On Thursday, while buying vegetables at the local market, a woman my age approached me. Excuse me, are you new to the neighborhood? Yes, I arrived 3 months ago. That's wonderful. My name is Patricia. I live 2 streets over. A group of us neighbors get together on Tuesday afternoons to knit and chat. Would you like to join us? My first instinct was to say no. I had learned to be alone, to not need the company of others. But something in her genuine smile made me hesitate. I don't know how to knit very well. It doesn't matter. I didn't either, and they taught me. It's really more of an excuse to drink coffee and gossip. I laughed in spite of myself. All right. Where do you meet? At Mrs. Remedios's house. The one with the purple bougainvillea. Tuesday at 4. The following Tuesday, nervous as a teenager on her first day of school, I knocked on the door of the house with the purple bougainvillea. Mrs. Remedios answered, a large woman with a booming laugh and an apron covered in flower stains. You must be Isabel. Patricia told me you were coming. Come in, come in. We just made cornbread. Inside, there were 6 women of different ages, all sitting in a circle with their knitting. They welcomed me with immediate warmth, without invasive questions, without judgment. Just, sit here, have some coffee, try the bread. For 2 hours we knitted, talked, and laughed. We talked about our children. We all had mixed stories of disappointment and joy. We talked about our ailments, knees that creaked, eyesight that was failing, memories that faded. We talked about TV shows, recipes, neighbors. And no one asked me about stolen rings. No one looked at me with contempt. No one made me feel small. When I left that afternoon, with some yarn and needles that Mrs. Remedios had given me to practice, I felt something warm in my chest, something I had forgotten existed. Community, belonging, unconditionally. On Friday, a month after making the will, I was served with legal papers. Ryan was suing me. He was accusing me of parental alienation because I was poisoning his children against him. He was demanding that I be prohibited from seeing Sebastian and Valerie, and was also demanding financial compensation for emotional damages to the tune of $1 million. The rage I felt was volcanic. I called Montserrat immediately. This is ridiculous. The children come here on their own. I know, ma'am, and we're going to prove it. Would the children be willing to testify? I don't want to put them through that. I understand, but it might be necessary. Regardless, we have all the harassing text messages Ryan sent you. We have evidence that he emotionally abandoned you. His lawsuit is weak, and he knows it. This is just intimidation. But what if he wins? What if they take my grandchildren away from me? He won't win, trust me. But the fear had taken root in my chest. I couldn't sleep that night. I walked through my new, peaceful, perfect house, wondering if Ryan would finally find a way to destroy even this. On Saturday, Sebastian arrived earlier than usual. He was carrying a heavy backpack. "Grandma, can I stay with you for a while?" "What happened?" "Mom and Dad are fighting all the time. Last night, Mom threw a plate at him. It almost hit me. And Valerie cries every night. I can't stand being there anymore." I held him as he cried on my shoulder. This 12-year-old boy, carrying the weight of a destroyed marriage, of parents who used their children as weapons. "You can stay for the weekend, but I have to talk to your mother. I don't want any legal trouble." I called Ashley. She answered with a tired voice. "Mrs. Flores, Sebastian is with me. He says he wants to stay." A long silence. "Let him. Maybe he'll find some peace there. Lord knows there's nothing but screaming in this house." "And Ryan?" "Ryan is too busy feeling sorry for himself to notice that his children are abandoning him too." She hung up. That night, Sebastian and I ate tamales we had made together. Afterwards, we sat in the garden under the stars, listening to the crickets. "Grandma, do you regret anything?" "Many things, honey. But most of all, I regret not valuing myself sooner, for teaching your father that it was okay to treat me badly. Do you think I'm going to end up like him? Not if you choose to be different. We all have choices, Sebastian. Your father chose resentment and bitterness. You can choose something else. What did you choose? Freedom. I chose to be free." On Sunday morning, I woke up to find Sebastian already up, watering my garden plants. "What are you doing up so early?" "Well," I thought, "if I'm going to be staying here sometimes, I should help you. Like you helped me my whole life." Something in my chest expanded until it almost hurt. "Thank you, honey." "Grandma?" "Yes? When I grow up, I'm going to be like you. Strong, even if it's hard." I hugged him there in the garden, with the rising sun painting everything gold, with the smell of damp earth and ripe lemons. And I understood that this genuine connection with my grandson, this moment of pure, unconditional love, was worth more than all the money in the world. It was worth more than the approval of a neighborhood. It was worth more than the forgiveness of an ungrateful son, because this was real. And finally, after 73 years, so was I.